Right now, somewhere over the Atlantic, a passenger is taking a hot shower at 40,000 feet. She has her own living room, a double bed, and even heated bathroom floors. Basically a 125 square foot private apartment in the front of an Airbus A380. Meanwhile, somewhere over Ohio, another passenger is squeezed into a seat with 28 inches of legroom that doesn't even recline. Now, both of these people are flying commercial, but they are sitting at opposite ends of 7 levels of airline luxury, and the airlines designed every level on purpose. So, let's start at the very bottom and work our way up. Level 1, ultra low cost economy. We're talking Frontier, Ryanair, airlines like that. Seat pitch, which is the distance from your seat back to the one in front of you, is around 28 inches across most of these airlines. And that's the last time I'll mention that number, because from here on, 28 inches is basically the floor. There's not even a required minimum. In 2023, a US appeals court declined to force the FAA to create one. For a comparison, a normal economy seat in the 1970s had around 35 inches. The seats are fixed shells that the industry calls pre-reclined, which is a pretty hopeful way of describing basically a park bench. Ryanair has even removed seat back pockets and window blinds from some planes, because pockets have to be cleaned, and blinds can break. And seat pitch really does affect the money, because add just 1 extra inch across an entire narrow-body plane, and the airline could lose a full row of seats. Take that inch away, and suddenly the cost per passenger drops below the competition. Level 2 is probably what most people picture when they think of flying. This is a standard economy on a major airline, around 30 to 32 inches of seat pitch, a seat that actually reclines, and free drinks. On longer international flights, you will usually also get meals, alcohol, and a screen in the seat back. This is the section that fills most of the plane. It spreads out the airline's fixed costs, but it also brings in the least revenue per square foot of any level. So, the major airlines eventually copied the ultra low cost model and created basic economy. The exact same seat, just with fewer bags, less flexibility, and more restrictions. One level up is one of the newest cabins in the sky, and per square foot, one of the most profitable parts of the entire plane. Level 3, premium economy. You usually get around 36 to 38 inches of seat pitch, a wider seat, 1 fewer seat per row on a wide body, better food, and sometimes even champagne. Quick pause, if you want to see more videos about how the built world actually works, remember to hit that subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it, and it really helps the channel grow. A premium economy seat takes up about 1.5 times as much space as an economy seat, but the airline can often charge more than double the price. On a flight from London to New York, that might mean $400 for economy and $1,000 for premium economy. And that is exactly why nearly every major long-haul airline now offers a cabin that barely even existed 35 years ago. The cabin was mainly created for business travelers whose companies had stopped paying for business class. By that point, business class had become much more luxurious, with lie-flat beds and much higher prices, which left a huge gap between an $800 economy ticket and a $5,000 business class ticket. Premium economy was designed to fill that gap without taking up too much extra space. But airlines cannot make the seats too spacious or the numbers stop working. Turkish Airlines once offered premium economy with 46 inches of seat pitch, but it took up too much room and the cabin was gone by 2016. So even though premium economy is sold as a major comfort upgrade, it is still mostly about fitting in as many high-paying passengers as possible. At level 4, the names start getting a little misleading. In the US, your boarding pass might say first class, but what you're actually getting is a wider reclining seat with around 37 to 40 inches of pitch, 2 seats on each side, free drinks, meals on longer flights, and 2 checked bags. If you remember Spirit's big front seat, the actual seat is almost identical, and it can sometimes cost just $12 more than the cheapest fare. So the first class name is doing a lot of work here. And the seats themselves barely changed for decades, partly because so many passengers get into them through frequent flyer upgrades instead of paying full price. Airlines don't have much reason to completely redesign a product they are often giving away for free. Europe takes the same idea even further. European business class is usually just a regular economy seat with the middle seat blocked off, same legroom, same width, and the same recline as the seats in the back. The only thing separating the cabins is a curtain that can slide forward or backward depending on how many business class seats the airline sells for that flight. So most of what you are paying for happens before you even get on the plane. Lounge access, faster security, priority boarding, and a more flexible ticket. On flights under 3 hours, passengers are mostly paying for convenience and flexibility, not comfort. A flight from Frankfurt to Madrid is over before a much nicer seat would really make that big of a difference. But in the US, a short haul route can still mean a 6-hour flight across the country, so European airlines sell the extra services while US airlines sell the bigger seat. Now level 5, and this is where airlines make the real money, and it is slowly making the level above it less relevant. This is long-haul business class, a seat that turns into a fully flat bed, direct aisle access for every passenger, and more recently, a sliding door for extra privacy. In 2000, British Airways introduced the first fully flat bed in business class, and airlines have been trying to outdo each other ever since. The current benchmark is Qatar Airways Q Suite, which launched in 2017. You get a 79-inch bed behind a sliding door, and if you lower the divider between two center seats, it can even turn into a double bed, something business class has never offered before. A round-trip ticket between the US and Doha will usually cost somewhere between $4,000 and $8,000. This is really the main point of the entire video. Premium passengers, business and first class combined, make up only around 6% of international travelers, but they generate roughly 30% of international airline revenue. Economy fills the plane and helps cover the basic operating costs, but this part of the cabin is where airlines make most of their profit on long-haul flights. And that same math is making the level above it harder and harder to justify. A first-class suite can take up about the same amount of space as 4 to 10 economy seats, while costing around 4 times as much as business class, even though modern business class already gives you most of the same experience. Qatar Airways' former CEO even questioned whether first class still needed to exist once Q Suite launched. Its commercial chief told investors that customers simply were not buying it. United and Delta had already gotten rid of theirs. And by 2024, airlines around the world were reportedly scheduling around 40% fewer first-class seats than they were in 2019. So level 6 should be disappearing, but instead, the airlines that still offer it are making it more extravagant than ever. This is international first class, and at this level, you're not really buying a seat anymore, you're buying your own private room. Emirates is probably the most famous example. Its A380 has 14 private suites on the upper deck, along with 2 shower spas featuring heated floors and exactly 5 minutes of running water, complete with a countdown timer. There is even an onboard bar with a bartender. Emirates offers close to 26,800 first-class suite seats every week, making it the largest first-class operation in the world, and a round-trip ticket from Sydney to London can easily cost between $25,000 and $35,000. Singapore Airlines takes a different approach by offering fewer suites but making each one much bigger. There are only 6 suites, each around 50 square feet, with both a leather armchair and a completely separate bed. And if you combine 2 suites in the middle, they turn into one private room with a double bed. So on the same upper deck where Emirates fits 14 suites, Singapore Airlines only fits 6. Japan Airlines raised the bar again in January 2024. Its enclosed first-class suites come with a 43-inch 4K screen, speakers built into the headrest so you can watch movies without headphones, menus created by chefs with a combined 10 Michelin stars, and a champagne that costs around $1,400 per bottle and is not served by any other airline. A recent one-way ticket from Dallas to Tokyo was priced at $19,541 in cash, or you could book the exact same seat for 80,000 American Airlines miles in just $44. And that massive difference is basically what created the entire points and miles influencer industry. Lufthansa's biggest first-class perk does not even happen in the air. In Frankfurt, first-class passengers get their own private terminal where an assistant handles their passport and a Porsche drives them directly across the tarmac to the plane. For the airlines that still offer it, first class serves 3 main purposes. It makes the brand look more luxurious, it makes business class seem more affordable, and on a few routes with enough wealthy travelers, it can still make real money. And that brings us to the final level, one that does not even have a booking code. Level 7. Above first class, you're not really buying a seat anymore. You're buying entire rooms, buildings, and even a piece of aviation history. In December 2014, Etihad introduced the Residence, a 125 square foot private space on the upper deck of an A380, roughly the footprint of 3 dozen level 1 seats. It came with a living room, a separate bedroom with a double bed, a private shower, and a butler trained at London's Savoy Hotel. One-way tickets sold anywhere from $20,000 to $30,000. But my favorite detail of this is actually why the space existed in the first place. The nose of the A380 curves inward, which meant normal seats would not fit properly. So Etihad took what was basically a dead corner of the plane and turned it into one of the most famous cabins in aviation history. By most accounts, the residents flew empty most of the time, but that was not necessarily a failure, because its real job was publicity. It existed so every travel site and news outlet in the world would talk about Etihad. But even the most luxurious products eventually have to make sense. When the Etihad brought its A380s back after the pandemic, the residents returned in a much smaller role. It was no longer its own cabin class. Instead, first class passengers could pay around $1,600 to $4,000 to upgrade into it, and the private butler was removed. So one of the most extravagant airline products ever created can now cost less to add on than some regular domestic first class tickets. One ticket sits at the very top of the ladder. In 2007, an entrepreneur named Julian Hayward won a charity auction for the first Singapore Airlines suites ticket on the inaugural A380 flight from Sydney to Singapore. He reportedly paid more than $100,000 for a one-way ticket and still had to find his own way home. But Hayward was not really buying a flight. He was buying something no normal fare class could ever offer, a permanent place in aviation history. So let's step back and try to make sense of all this. Deregulation turned the middle of the plane into a competition over who could offer the lowest price. Ultra low-cost airlines pushed the bottom even lower, and lie-flat business class became so good that it started making traditional first class harder to justify. So the airlines that still offer first class had to go beyond the seat entirely, adding showers, private apartments, and even separate airport terminals. Because at the very top of the ladder, airlines are not just selling comfort, they are selling the reputation that comes with offering something no one else can. Airline luxury never disappeared, it just became more concentrated. Fewer cabins on fewer airlines with prices that sometimes look like typos. The ladder keeps stretching in both directions because at the bottom, airlines keep pushing towards the smallest seat they can legally get away with, and at the top, the only real limit is what they can market. Remember to subscribe if you want to see more about how the built world actually works. I'm Tristan, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.